Fellas, lady fellas, everyone in our society, welcome to the Fantasy and Reality Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Tacker. Today in the ridiculously over-decorated studio, we're going to be discussing the best and worst performances of week 6 thus far. There were quite a few amazing performances, surprising performances, and a few disappointing ones, but that goes with fantasy football. So let's get started with the quarterbacks. The guys that had the top days were Matt Ryan. He went 30 for 36, 356 yards and 4 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson went 21 for 33 for 236 yards, no passing touchdowns, but he did go 19 for 152 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. So got 150 rushing yards and over 200 passing yards, making history, doing what he does. It's Lamar Jackson. He's going to keep on doing it. Next, we had Deshaun Watson. He went 30 for 42, 280 yards, a touchdown, 10 rushes, 42 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So another guy, most of these guys getting it done in the air and through the ground, like a lot of them do most of the time. So if you can get your hands on guys like that next year or trade for them, it'll prepare you much more, having points through the air and on the ground for the same guys. So if you can get your hands on any of these guys, I would prefer if I had them. So I would suggest getting them for yourself. Anyway, so next guy, we had Russell Wilson, another rusher. We had 23 for 33, 295 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and then 9 rushes, 31 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Kyler Murray, another rusher, 27 for 37, 340 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, 11 rushes for 32 yards. Not as much, he only rushed when he had to, not to gain any yards, but only to not lose any, so that's why he had such a low average. But he's still a runner, a mobile quarterback, so it'd be helpful for your team. Other quarterbacks having fantastic days were Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield finally having a decently good game, even though he threw a pick. He's still in the top 10 as far as fantasy performances for the quarterback. So next we have the running back position. Now, for them, the best performances of week 6 were James Conner. He went 16 for 41 and 1 touchdown. Receiving, he had 7 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. Nick Chubb coming up as he usually does. 20 rushes, 122 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions, 17 yards. David Johnson, 12 rushes, 34 yards, not too much, but he did get a touchdown. He also got 6 receptions, 68 yards, and a touchdown. So they're using him a lot more in the passing game. Devontae Freeman, coming up, 19 rushes, 88 yards, no rushing touchdowns, but he did get 3 receptions for 30 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. So they're also using him so much more in the receiving game. And so, you didn't get him to be your number 1 running back, so he's putting up top tier running back 2 numbers, so it's definitely working out for your team. Next, around the top 5, we have Ezekiel Elliott. He had 28 rushes for 105 yards and a touchdown. He also had 5 receptions and 47 receiving yards. So, like a lot of these guys, just like with the quarterbacks, they're dual threats. They can run and they can catch. So, especially in PPR leagues, these guys are super valuable. Now, more running backs to round out the top 10 this week. We had Chris Carson, Christian McCaffrey, Miles Sanders, Carlos Hyde, surprisingly enough, and Leonard Fournette. Even though he didn't have the greatest day, he still had over 10 points. So, for the best wide receivers this week, Stephon Diggs, finally. So they say the squeaky wheel got the grease type thing. They fed him this week. He did amazingly. He had 7 receptions, 167 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Dude was a freak this weekend. We had Terry McLaurin, who's been doing really well, getting his 100 yards. He had 4 receptions, 100 yards on the dot, and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin, 10 receptions for 151 yards, keeping up that top fantasy receiver play. Tyreek, in his welcome back game, he had 5 receptions, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Curtis Samuel, playing in the early London game, had 4 receptions, 70 yards, a touchdown. He also had 1 rush for 8 yards and a rushing touchdown. Now, other receivers going off in week 6, we had Alshon Jeffrey, Robbie Anderson, Golden Tate, Mike Evans, and Julian Edelman. So the best performances for the tight end were another guy coming back off of injury, doing fantastically. Hunter Henry, if you can get your hands on him, if you gave him up or someone else did, try to get him. He'll be in a waiver wire Wednesday video, spoiler alert. But Hunter Henry went 8 receptions for 100 yards on the dot and 2 touchdowns. Next we had Mr. Reliable at the tight end position. My top guy who's, like I always say, not a sexy pick, but he's going to get those points. Austin Hooper, he went 8 receptions, 117 yards and 1 touchdown. George Kittle had another 8 receptions for 103 yards. Mark Andrews, 6 receptions, 99 yards, just missing that 100-yard mark. And then, surprisingly enough, Ricky Seals-Jones going 3 receptions and 47 yards for a touchdown. So, I mean, he is doing really well. He might be too volatile as far as the tight ends go, but I mean, he's still doing decently well. He's kind of pushing out Pharaoh Brown. So look for him to be a little bit more involved at that tight end position now that Njoku's out. But other tight ends getting the job done this week were Darren Fells, Cameron Brate, passing up O.J. Howard, getting those stats over him. Jared Cook, he had a touchdown, the only touchdown in that game. Max Williams, if you don't know who that is, not surprising. And then Ryan Griffin. So we had some really good performances. They did really well. A lot of guys performed peak. Guys coming off of injury. Guys who have been super quiet thus far. Just had really explosive games. We had other guys who didn't have a lot of steam coming into this week that did well, that are consistent across the whole season. Guys who didn't have any momentum coming into the entire season, like rookies that are just putting up consistent numbers week in and week out, doing really well, putting their case in for Rookie of the Year. But with every good performance, we have bad performances. So the worst performances of week 6 so far, because there is another game tonight. So the guys so far, which are guys that score under 10 fantasy points in PPR formats, were Marcus Mariota, Josh Rosen, Jared Goff, Ryan Tannehill, Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, Daniel Jones, Delvin Hodges, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Peyton Barber, Malcolm Brown, Chris Thompson, Derrick Henry, Giovanni Bernard, Jordan Howard, Darrell Henderson, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Darrell Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Keelan Ballage, Rojo, Melvin Gordon, Damian Williams, Emmanuel Sanders, Amari Cooper, Josh Gordon, Juju Smith-Schuster, Trey Quinn, Deontay Johnson, Marquise Goodwin, Tyler Boyd, A.J. Brown, Byron Pringle, Willie Snead, Deebo Samuel, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, Mohamed Sanu, Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, Corey Davis, DJ Chark, Dante Pettis, Robert Woods, Keith QT, Nelson Aguilar, Dede Westbrook, Mecole Hardman, Michael Gallup, Will Fuller, Matt LaCosse, Will Disley, unfortunately, who had that injury, Vance McDonald, Pharaoh Brown, Blake Jarwin, Charles Clay, Gerald Everett, Tyler Eifert, Noah Fant, Ryan Izzo, O.J. Howard, Tyler Higbee, Kyle Rudolph, Delaney Walker, Zach Ertz, Greg Olsen, Travis Kelce, and Dallas Goedert, just to name a few. So those were guys, like I said, performed poorly in the full PPR format, scoring under 10 points, so not double-digit guys. So, I mean, surprising performances. Jared Goff absolutely pooped. I mean, a few guys like Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, 2 of the top 3 tight ends are in the worst performances. So, they'll have bounce backs. I'm not worried about guys like that. But, you know, I mean, there are some that I'm a bit worried about, like Keenan Allen and Jarvis Landry, who have kind of fallen off just a tad. But if they can have bounce backs in week 7 and moving forward, just keep on the upward trend, that'll be fantastic. But it's fantasy, real life, you never know. So those were a few of the best and worst performances of the week so far in week 6. So we have the Monday night game between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. It should be really interesting and fun. I'm hoping the running backs have super good games, being Aaron Jones and Kerryon Johnson. I need them to have the game of their lives. So if they can do that, it'd be perfect. But it's fantasy, so you never know how anything goes. But as always, thank you for tuning in and thank you for all your support. Leave all your questions, comments, feedback, top suggestions down there in the comment section below. We'll try to answer any and all questions. that you may have as accurately as possible. Remember that sports are supposed to be enjoyed together. So tell someone about us, watch together. We want to grow the Evan Royal Society as much as possible. In order to do that, you gotta smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe buttons, keep trying to give you as much content as possible. Also, don't forget to hit that little notification bell so that you'll be notified the moment that our videos hit the web. But lastly, God bless America and God bless fantasy football. Take care.